Okay, so we've had some requests for people who want to know how I go about painting my Rebel Grots, and so we're putting together this awesome little tutorial vid to show you how it's done. Okay, so the first step is you want to prime it a metallic color. It can be any metallic color. I'm using Lead Belcher from Citadel because that's what I happen to have. Oh! Okay, so once you've got the paint off your face, next thing you're going to do is you're going to block in the armor. So you're just going to get your Wild Rider red, and you're going to start blotching it in here. And you're going to avoid the edges. The edges, we want to stay the metal color because the edges is where the wind and the sand and the caustic squig droppings everywhere have worn away the paint. So you know how like you're usually like painting by colors and it's like you want to go all the way to the edge of the line? Well, here we're going to break those rules. We're going to break the coloring book rules, and we're going to leave some of the metal and just kind of go around everything. And what this will do is this will give the appearance that some horrible little grot slave was given a bucket of paint and told to paint it up. He did so very reluctantly, and then over time the wind and the sand and bullets all kind of went in there and chipped away at the edges on it. So basically you want it to look like Mater from Cars, where there's most of the paint is gonna be gone, but it's still kind of clinging onto the central areas. You can see like around this bullet hole I've left some silver. If you look at actual pictures of bullets, it tends to make the paint chip away around it, and so that's a fun little detail you can put in there. As you can see, this really doesn't take very long, and it's not particularly difficult, but it does require you to just kind of be thinking like, where would the paint remain after weeks and months of just being out in the desert arid sands. Have an existential crisis because you just realized you're a 47-year-old man making a YouTube video about how to paint toy soldiers. Okay, so now we've got our colors blocked in and they're dry. That's important because the next step is we're going to put a really heavy wash on it. I'm using Rattling Grime because that happens to be what I have, but there's a lot of things you can use. If you are going to use Rattling Grime, you're going to need to tone it down a little. It's really, really strong. So, I mean, if you want your model to look like it's just absolutely dripping in mud, then Rattling Grime is the way to go. I like it a little less grimy than that. I like my orcs to look like they've bathed once in their lives, perhaps. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to put this all over everything, and it's going to seep into all those cracks. It's going to seep into all of those bullet holes that we put into it. It's going to just stain the ever-living crud out of it. And then we're going to give it a long time to dry. We need it completely dry for the next step, which is when we'll go through and we'll kind of clean everything up. These little pipes here, I want to get in between the pipes. That creates separation between them. You will have some areas that kind of pool up like this. You can just kind of wipe it off. You want about like, I would say about that much goop. We will clean up some stuff in the cleanup stage, so don't worry too much if you get like a little area that's all gooped up, because it just adds character in the end. And yes, we are also going to goop up the tire. Now, whatever brush you use for this is absolutely gonna get ruined. So use an old ratty brush, one that is past its prime, because this contrast paint will just soak up into the head of the bristles and just absolutely ruin it. So don't use a nice brush for any of this. Don't be afraid to just kind of really glop it on there. You want it nice and messy. The more messy it is, the more oaky it looks, because you just want it all muddy up in there. Get some underneath. I'm going to put a little dot boop, in the barrel there. So there you go. There now. You can see now it's starting to feel pretty orky, right? It's starting to feel like, oh, okay, I see where this is going. I see what you're putting down. Now you can see that it's darkening the red a lot, and that's okay. Because what we're going to do is, after it dries, we're going to go through and brighten the red back up again. We're not going to repaint the red, but we are going to find those places in the center of the red panels that we want to kind of really carry the color, and we're going to put the color back in on them. One thing that's nice about this, the contrast, is it takes something flat like this tire surface, and once you get it on in there, it kind of pulls towards the edges. It does, it does its job as a contrast, and it makes the surface just kind of have this neat little gradient about it I think it's really cool. And it looks like one of those things where I don't know if you can see it, but like right in here, see how it kind of settles into this natural little gradient there? It looks like, oh wow, look, did you spend a lot of time highlighting and blending and doing all the stuff to get the tire to look right there? And when people ask you that, there's one thing you say, and then you always say, yes, I did. It took hours.
Part 5. Accidentally drinking your paint water. You try to take a sip of your OJ. Oh no! It's your paint water!
All right, so we let this dry during the night, and now we have this wonderful, beautiful, grimy looking thing. The next step is going to be a really fun step. We're going to put on this Necron compound. This is my favorite dry brush metallic. It's absolutely brilliant. I've tried using other metallic paints. Nothing has worked as well. So up until now, I've been like, yeah, use whatever you have. But in this case, I think the Necron compound is the only one that you can or should use. Now, you can use a big old dry brush. I like the little flat kind because it gives me a lot of control. And what we're going to do here is we're going to catch just the edges. Because what we want is to put a little shine on this. Every time there's an edge, there's a place where something is rubbed off. And also the seam. See how we get that nice seam there? But what you're not trying to do, you're not trying to cover the whole thing. You're not trying to dry brush the entire model. What we're doing is we're just going on the edges to get those little places where the paint has really rubbed off. The way I think of it is like, if you ever think of like a really, really rusty blade, like you ever seen those like knife restoration videos, and then they take the file and they file it and you just see a little bit of the bright metal revealed by the filing. That's kind of what I think of in my head when I do this, and that's what we're trying to accomplish. We are not trying to to coat the thing, we are trying to just get all of these edges to have a little shine to them. We're also going to do it on the tire, believe it or not. This one I don't need to be nearly as careful with on the tire. But the tire, I find, really looks good with a nice little dry brush. Dry brush, dry brush. Get it back in here. See the down there in the axle? We're going to get some down in there. I'm actually glad the brush fits. I wasn't sure it was going to. I'm going to spend some time here getting the edges of the little Grots symbol. All right, now we're going to go for this upper. We're just lightly feathering it, especially like right after you put the compound on the brush. You want to do a really light touch. Sometimes it'll have more on it than you think, and you can really go too far pretty easily. There we go. That's so good. And also the gold parts, like these little exhaust tubes, just a little bit of texture, a little bit of shine. Oh, that's looking so good. All right, let's do this little wrench symbol here. Now, this one I'm going to have to be careful with because this is a little plastic bit, and see how it's wobbling around like that? Yeah, that makes me worry. So, dry brushing can be kind of an aggressive thing. So, oh yeah. Dad! Okay, so now for the final step, we're going to go through and do a little touch-up. Now, we have from the wash these lovely little dark red and black areas, and we have from the highlight these nice little chipped shiny areas, and we do not want to cover those up. What we do want to do, however, is bring a little bit of shine and highlight to kind of the central parts of the panel, the areas where maybe the paint is clung on a little bit more than the others. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go through and kind of follow the natural pattern of what's there. Unlike my armies can be fairly bright, and so even though there's a lot of grime and dirt on this, you do want some areas that kind of retain the true color, because you want these things to go fast. If they go fast, they gotta be red, because the red ones go fast. And as you start this, it's gonna feel a little weird. It's gonna feel like, oh, this isn't really working. But once you get a lot of it done, it really brightens up the whole thing and adds a lot of that kind of texture look. So basically just imagine like there's little ringed layers starting at the edges of the panels, and the farther into the panel you get, the more true color. Okay, so now that we've got the red nice and true, now we're going to do the same thing with the gold. Again, the goal is not to cover up what we've done. The goal is just to enrich the kind of center of each panel so that all of the shadows and gradients remain, but we're creating a highlight with its own color. This is the Citadel Retributor armor, which is honestly just one of my favorite metallics of all time. It covers so well. It's one of those paints that you can just put a little bit on and you can always trust it to just do its job. seems like this little panel, gold panel here just got completely washed out by our dry brush, so reestablish it. All right, so here we go. We got our final Grot war bike all done here. See, if I put on the pilot. Look at that happy little guy, just living his best life. You know, and it's not enough that he has this huge gun, little control sticks to control it. It's not enough that he's got a big old electrified ramrod thing to run into people. No, he's also got to pull out his own pistol and add to the firepower, because that's the whole point. So as you can see here, it's really easy to do. It's really fun, and it adds a lot of character. It has a very distinctive, very orky look, very Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, and that's kind of the whole point.